Hi, everyone, and welcome to A Better Future Starts Here, a live weekly Facebook show brought to you by the American Society for the Positive Care of Children, otherwise known as American SPCC. I'm your host, advocate, and catalyst, Tracy Kawa. American SPCC is dedicated to improving the lives of children in the United States. We are America's voice for children, bringing individuals and organizations to ensure that children are raised in safe environments so that they may thrive to become healthy, secure leaders of tomorrow. Our goal is to bring you perspective, knowledge, and support from the industry experts who are all dedicated to empowering the lives of children and families. Today, our guest is Sylvia Farbstein. She has spent the last 2 decades learning how life presents us with unexpected twists and turns that can shake us to our core, stop us in our tracks, or provide a catalyst for exciting change. Her professional world took a leap from the predictable and defined realm of private banking in New York City to one of few answers and no blueprint with her 21-year-old son, or when her 21-year-old son, Brandon, was diagnosed with a rare form of dwarfism. Their experiences navigating a world not built for somebody like him prompted them to seek out ways to neither be confined nor defined by the limits, perceived or otherwise. This has led to an entrepreneurial career path for both mother and son that has impacted the lives of millions. It's so exciting to have you here today. Thank you so much for being our guest.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sylvia.
Sure. So I'm originally from New York, and I moved from New York City to Richmond, Virginia, where I've been living for the past 26 years and raised both of our kids. Fun fact about me is that my husband and I met on a blind date, and I was his 95th blind date. So
95th.
Yes. Sometimes
it takes work 94 times.
That's right. That's right. So sometimes you can go from 95 to number 1 very quickly. So,
that's a lesson.
There's always hope.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that experience should have really shown me that life is going to be full of unexpected surprises and twists and turns. And so we experienced that in the largest way when our son Brandon was sort of diagnosed out of nowhere. So I took him on his 2-year checkup, and the pediatrician proceeded to tell me everything was fine. And my gut told me otherwise. And I spoke up and I said, it seems like he's not changing sizes as quickly as his older sister Brooke was. And I think that his torso is growing, but his limbs are much slower to grow. And the doctor then took another look at him and right away sent us to a geneticist. And that really taught me that, as much as we want to be respectful when it comes to the medical community and anyone of authority, us moms especially have this beautiful intuitive sense that we need to tap into and don't even question it. But if something just doesn't feel right, go with your gut. And so that led to Brandon's skeletal x-rays being sent to the UCLA Skeletal Dysplasia Registry. And it took them 6 months to come back with a diagnosis. And it's called metatropic dysplasia, which is one of hundreds of different forms of dwarfism. Nothing that ran on either side of our family. It was just a fluke, a genetic mutation. And it's such a rare condition that there are less than 85 medically documented cases around the world. So for me, as someone who was enthralled with knowing what the next steps are and living in what I perceived was a world of certainty, because I was in the financial services industry and, numbers don't lie, right?
Exactly.
I all of a sudden was thrown with something that had no blueprint. There was no playbook.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I, needed to create our own world and our own reality when it came to raising our son.
Yeah, it's incredible what a mother's instinct can pick up on, way before the science shows it, obviously. And just the fact that you had to become Brandon's medical advocate, overnight, or at least, once you received those genetic diagnoses back. What was that like, having to become an overnight, involving yourself in medicine and all things genetic?
It's interesting because if you would have asked me a hypothetical question,
Yeah.
was I ever equipped to do something like that? I would have said absolutely not. It really takes a special person to be able to decipher and, find their voice and be able to stand in their power with authority. But I think when life throws things your way, you have two choices. You could either stay stuck and give up, or you could step up to the plate and figure out, what is it that I need to do to move forward? And so Steve, my husband, and I decided that we weren't going to question and feel like, why did this happen to us? Or, be stuck in the emotional sadness or frustration, but we decided to get to work, and to do whatever we could to give Brandon the best life possible. And, if that included fighting with insurance to get coverage on surgeries, which we had to do numerous times, then we were up for the challenge.
Well, that's great. And I love what you said about, really, the truth of the matter is getting into a productive mindset, getting into the mindset of, not reacting, but instead being proactive, and just learning all the facets that go along, the insurance, the medical, the doctors, the patient coordination, right? Pretty much like you had to become a multidisciplinary patient coordinator and coordinate all of the moving parts.
Yeah, I remember having these huge, thick binders of, different medical records, because at that point we were just running around all over the place. Nothing was centralized.
Right.
But at the same time, I think it's also important that you need to form relationships with these medical professionals, even the front desk staff and, the nurses, because you just never know when you're going to need them. And you don't want them to look at you as just another number. I certainly didn't want them to look at my son that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I really went out of my way to create meaningful relationships. And it made a difference when I picked up the phone, especially when these doctors were not local. And I needed, for Brandon to see them in short order because there was one complication or another. So I think it's really important to not lose sight of the human factor.
That's beautiful. And sometimes it can be difficult or scary for someone to network or build relationships, especially out of their local area. By finding out who it is, the right person that you need to speak with.
Yeah, it definitely is. Sometimes it felt overwhelming and intimidating. But what I found was the more I opened up, the more people were willing to help or to make introductions. And so what I would say for parents out there, don't try to do it on your own. Seek out resources. And now it's easier more than ever. When we got this diagnosis, there really wasn't the world of Google or the internet or even Facebook. There's really no online support. And I felt very isolated and alone, although locally I had a wonderful tribe of very caring friends, and our extended family, was out of town, and they were wonderful and caring, but it's just not the same as finding your tribe in terms of finding those that are walking in your shoes or are a few steps ahead of you. So now it's easier than ever to find that kind of support, and you don't ever have to meet them in person.
Amazing. And then you can compare milestones and treatments or symptoms or information, resources, all of the above.
Yeah, for sure. And I especially loved meeting those with kids that were, a little older, so that I kind of had an idea of what to expect in certain things. But now I love speaking to families with younger kids, because I love being of service to them and being able to, tell them, okay, when it comes time to drive a car, these are the things that you should look for, and these are the things that you should do. So it's amazing the world that we have, through technology, that connects us in our unknown medical adventures. But I really do encourage all families to try to find that kind of support.
The mind has an interesting way of worrying about the future, doesn't it?
For
So
sure.
even though there's a situation right at hand that needs to be dealt with, as parents, as individuals, our minds can be 5, 10 years down the road. What is this going to look like? How is my child going to function in the world? Who's going to help them? So it's so great that they have you as a resource, and that, you've kind of been at each milestone and you get to share what to look for. And also teaching them, like you, rely on your judgment as a parent to a very large extent.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm going to be very transparent and share that it's only now that I've been able to look back and realize all the amazing tools that I've been able to sort of build up in my toolkit over the years. It wasn't something that came naturally to me. I definitely had very challenging times of adversity along the way. But isn't it beautiful for us to be able to sort of look back and realize that we have walked through some really difficult times? And the beauty of life is that those are the times that enable us to learn and grow and stretch ourselves, and then become the ones who lift others up that are coming up along after us.
That's like a saying, after the storm, we find the rainbow, for sure.
Yeah. And to your point of not thinking about the future,
Yeah.
I think it's something that we all have to work on, because it's normal for us to continuously look forward. But what I found after I went through a really stressful time 4 years ago, when Brandon was so severely cyberbullied by his high school peers that we had to pull him out of his high school, I found myself so stressed and anxiety ridden that I ended up being diagnosed with shingles. And it was just really painful. And the doctor very clearly stated it was all due to stress. And that forced me to realize that not only do I not have control over anything, but I have to let go of everything. And once I let go, it's amazing how I was able to focus on my own healing journey, do my internal work. And it made such a difference in the way I showed up for both of my kids, for Brandon and his older sister, Brooke, because at the end of the day, kids may or may not listen to what we say, but no matter how old they are, they're always watching, right? And how we show up in terms of our energy and our attitude and our mindset has a direct correlation as to how they will experience life. I'm so convinced of that. So for me, it really took kind of hitting my own rock bottom in order to realize that I needed to take the steps to change. And so with that personal growth work that I am continuously doing, I realize that the only thing we can do is truly live in the moment. It's okay to, have goals and look forward to things, but don't let your mind, go to all of the unknown and get stuck in the fear of that. So instead, I sort of trick my mind, and I, whenever I feel myself getting a little anxious about the future, I look at it through a lens of curiosity and excitement rather than
Oh,
being fearful of it, right? Because the unknown is there anyway. I'm not going
right.
to make it go away, but
Exactly.
I can change my reaction to it, right?
Sure.
So little hacks and tricks that help our mindset, I feel, have a direct impact on our kids, even if they're young adults.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think the part that you brought up that I would like to delve into just a little bit more is the part about the self-care, right? Because you're you're dealing with medical issues for your son, and at the same time, you're absorbing a certain amount of the stress and the trauma. And that self-care is so important because after a while, it really does all catch up if it's not kept in check. And if we don't do these periodic looking into introspection, the periodic introspection.
Absolutely. And truthfully, the only way to do that introspection is to figure out how to sit in your own silence. And that is really challenging, especially, for busy moms who have sort of gotten into the routine of always being and doing and going, and especially doing for others.
Yeah.
And again, if I hadn't gone through my own medical suffering, if you will,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have had that wake up call, but that wake up call has really created some non-negotiables in my life. And I feel like every year those non-negotiables are refined and I've got more clarity. So, for example, this past year with the pandemic, I realized I've got to get out in nature, like almost every single day, unless it's pouring rain, even if it's cold,
Great.
because I realize it forces me to be in my silence, right? You can't like walk on a hiking trail or outside in your neighborhood
Mm.
and be stuck to a screen. So it
Yeah.
forces me to get away from that, to, just listen to the birds chirping and looking at nature. Just clears my head, it clears my soul, it enables me to breathe, right? So that's like an easy, free thing to do.
Yeah.
The other thing that I became more cognizant of is that we are in control of what we consume. And I'm not just talking about, trying to eat clean, which I definitely encourage, and, stay away from junk and the
Sure.
processed crap, because
Sure.
that does make a difference in, how we think and brain fog and all that.
Mhm.
But when I talk about consuming, I'm also talking about all the content that we consume online.
Yeah.
So I've become very intentional about, who I follow on social media, and not going down a rabbit hole of just those that like to complain. I really, I understand when people complain, but I really want solutions. Like that's how I live my life. Like if we're going to feel angry or bad about something, let's figure out the solutions or do something to drive change forward instead of just sitting there and venting and complaining the whole time. So it's really easy to block people or hit the unfollow button, and not have your feed filled with negativity. And then the other thing is it's important to not say yes to everything that comes your way, right? And I think it gets easier and easier as we get older, perhaps,
Sure.
to be able to say no
Mhm.
without feeling guilty. Because, if you think about it, if you're saying yes to everything, do you really have the space to say yes to yourself?
Something's got to give, right?
Exactly.
Something's gotta
Yes.
give. Yeah. And as women, we want to help and nurture. And, it takes a lot for some of us to say no. We just want to give, right? And care for. And at the same time, I think we're also learning that if we really want to be as productive as we want to be and as proactive as we want to be, then we do have to do the things like you were saying, like unplugging, spending time in the healing energies of nature. And nature does have healing energies. And then also unplugging from the content, like you said, not only consuming what we eat, junk in, junk out is really the fact. So I love that you brought that up, right? Because even, the American Society for the Positive Care of Children, we're focused on the children, but, we're also focused on the caregivers and the teachers and the moms and the dads. Like, how can we support them as a community?
For sure. And, I think years ago, if I would have spoken like this, I probably would have felt a little guilty that, oh, if I show up for myself, I'm taking time away from my kids.
Right.
And what I would say is reframe it and say, if I don't show up for myself, how am I best showing up for my kids and my family? I don't think you can. You can't stand at your full potential if you're not pouring into yourself.
Absolutely.
So
fill the vessel.
Fill it, yes. Fill it with things that ignite your soul, nourish your body and your mind, and really become more cognizant of where it is that your energy is draining. Because sometimes we may find that there are certain people in our life, intentionally or unintentionally, that don't feed into us becoming a better person, but rather are draining the life out of us. And if you can minimize your time with people like that, I think it really ends up serving you in a very positive way.
You bring up so many wonderful points, Sylvia. A couple more questions. Where can our audience find you?
Sure. So I am on Instagram and Facebook. My page is called Speak Beyond Words. So they could find me there. I'm on LinkedIn under Sylvia Farbstein, and my new favorite social media platform these days is Clubhouse. Clubhouse being an audio-only app, we can connect there by voice only, and it has been just the most amazing interactions, right? I see you nodding. I mean,
we met on Clubhouse.
That's right. We met on Clubhouse, and the energy on Clubhouse is phenomenal.
I was like, who is this powerhouse speaking? Who is this woman? I have got to have a conversation with her. And the funny thing was, when I spoke to the executive director, I told her I met this wonderful woman, told her about Brandon. She said, wait a minute, Brandon Farbstein? We love him. We follow him. We knew exactly who he was.
That's so amazing. Yeah, he's the one who actually made it onto Clubhouse a few weeks before I did. And I thought, oh my gosh, another social media platform that I have no time for. And I started listening to the conversations that he was a part of, and I was fascinated. So yeah, anyone that has an iPhone, I would say run and find a friend who's on it and get an invitation. But I think the Android version is coming out soon. Yeah. So everyone will be able to one day participate.
The floodgates will open.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about some of those special activities, some of those special boosts that you gave to Brandon that told him, hey, you're not different. You're not, there's nothing wrong with you. What were some of those messages?
Sure. So just to be clear, he always knew he was different. Okay. Like I remember when he was 4 years old and we were in my bedroom, I have, a floor length mirror, and he looked in the mirror and he said to me, why do I look so different? And I really wasn't prepared to answer him. So I said whatever I thought off the top of my head. And I just said, it's because you have special bones. Your bones.
Love that.
Yeah, your bones grow differently, and they grow a bit more slowly. So that way I didn't say to him, oh, you're always going to be small, or like I didn't say it in a limiting way. I said it in, I guess when I look back, I can now say it was more empowering than saying that, you won't be able to do this or you won't be able to reach that. By calling them special bones, like that was a perfect way to sort of open the door for him to realize that, all right, I've got something going on here. This is why I'm different. And then, as he got a little older, of course, we were able to, especially because we had so many doctor visits, we were able to use the correct terminology and help him understand that what he has is a form of dwarfism. And then when he was 8 years old, we took him, when he asked us, to a huge conference that was run by the Little People of America organization. Nice. And I remember this like it was yesterday. It was in Brooklyn, New York. Every year it's in a different destination. Okay. And we walked in and there were over 2,000 people that were either little people or families of little people. And you should have seen like his eyes opened wide. And for the first time, he realized, I'm not the only one.
That's great.
And so I feel like if we give kids not just empowering words, but the ability to surround themselves with those that have their condition, it helps them, just like us, realize that we're part of a community. We're part of a tribe that understands us, that, we can laugh with and we can cry with and we could be challenged with and we could find solutions with. So those are, two important tools that I feel like I gave him. And then the other thing was just, I think he was able to observe me being a very strong advocate for him and not accepting things.
Yeah.
I didn't take no for an answer very often. And I didn't accept things just because they've always been done that way. So, my whole motive was to enable him to have equity, to be able to have an education and literally be able to see the board and to go to assemblies and not like have to figure out how to peer over someone's head. So things like that. So I remember, every year we'd go in, we'd have meetings for a 504 plan. And he was part of that. I never spoke for him. I spoke with him. And then as the years went by, I would say, well, what do you think you need? And let him be part of innovating the solutions and coming up with the different things. And as the years went on, I learned to see things through his eyes. And it just has made me a better human, to widen my lens and realize it's not just my eyes that I need to see through. I need to be able to see through other people's eyes as well. So he has really taught me that. And instead of leading the way for him, as he became a teenager, I kind of stepped beside him and walked alongside. And that wasn't always easy because I did want to jump in and rescue him. But I sort of held myself back and realized that in order for him to develop a sense of self-worth and self-reliance, he needed to figure things out and he needed to experience some difficult things to make himself realize, you know what? I made it through that.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of times when we give birth to these babies, we think we are the all-knowing and, ever protecting parents. And as they grow up, we realize we can't protect them. Right. We can't. I mean, we could try, but we should be guiding them and we should support them and we should let them fall and we should let them fail, because if they figure out how to get back up, and for him, I think back when he started walking, his head was kind of a little bigger than his body. Right. And he would always like fall forward and bump his head, where we gave him the nickname of Bumpy Head. And now, we could look back and laugh at those times because we realized every single time he figured out how to get back up.
Wow. Yeah. You're a very empowering mom.
Thank you.
How were you able to help Brandon to break into public speaking?
So this was a wild, random series of events that weren't so random, because really not much in life is random if we think about it, right?
Truly.
So when he was 14 and we went to his orthopedic surgeon, who over the years, it took us years to find him, but he is the world's expert on metatropic dysplasia, and he's at DuPont Children's Hospital in Delaware. So when Brandon was 14, we went on that checkup, and Brandon said to the doctor, my legs really hurt after walking 1 or 2 city blocks. And the doctor said to him, I just want you to know there's no surgery that is going to guarantee that you will not be in pain. Because of the way your bones grow, there's nothing that we could permanently do. So you better start thinking about a mobility device. And Brandon did not want to be in a wheelchair or a motorized scooter, because he figured his legs still worked. So he wanted to be in a position to use them rather than sit and not use them. And he didn't want to look up at the world more than he already had to.
Right.
So he came up with his own solution of an upward mobility device. And the Segway was his mobility device of choice. And when he shared that with the doctor, I loved the fact that the doctor said, I've never had a patient who used that device, but you know what? Why don't you go for it? Why don't you give it a try? And you know what? He was a very special doctor to say something like that and not kind of brush it off and say that is ridiculous, you know? So I love the fact that he encouraged Brandon to give it a try. So I ended up finding this device a few months later at a promotional product trade show, of all places, in one of the booths, along with, you know, things with logos on them like pens and all kinds of swag and tchotchkes, was this upward mobility device that looked like a mini Segway. It was the craziest thing. So we ended up getting that for Brandon. And a few months after that, we were at the airport, and a woman came over to him and wouldn't stop asking him questions. And she ended up being one of the originators of TEDx. And so a few months later, he had the opportunity to be on the TEDx stage at the age of 15. And that was the first talk that he had ever given.
Wow.
Yeah. And it like leading up to it, like I thought I was going to just have a panic attack. I was so nervous for him.
Wow. What did he speak on? What was his topic?
His topic was about how technology could be used for the good or the bad. So he actually was able to be on stage with that mobility device and show how, you know, technology takes him where his legs cannot. And yet he also talked about, because freshman year he started getting cyberbullied. So he talked about how technology could be used to really, you know, harm people's lives. And so that day literally changed his life, because he found his higher purpose and his meaning. And it's really interesting because he had been a child actor. Drama was his activity that he absolutely, you know, loved to do. He couldn't do sports. So he found the stage a very welcoming place. And yet he said all those years prior to the TED Talk, he felt invisible because he was on stage always playing someone else. And that TED Talk gave him the opportunity to be himself. So it's interesting to know that we have to create space in our kids' lives for them to kind of feel at ease and, you know, show up for themselves. And I'm not saying every child has the desire to be on such a large platform, but it really is important for us to kind of let them explore their creative side, and discover, you know, the things that set their soul on fire. So that talk gave him the dream of becoming a professional speaker. And he was able, at the age of 18, to become the youngest member of the National Speakers Association. and now is a full-time professional speaker. So it's been a crazy journey, but if I go back and connect the dots, it was all because of these random things. And that gave me another huge life lesson, that you've got to open your heart and your mind to strangers, because you never know how one conversation, right? Just saying hello to someone could totally take your life in a different direction.
Sure. Could be a game changer. Not to mention the thousands more of people who Brandon has been inspiring with his story by being on stage.
And that's what totally drives him. Like, that is why he gets up in the morning, because the social media that could have killed him provides him with a beautiful opportunity to impact lives every single day. So, we're going to have a lot of challenges and difficulties in life, but again, you can't get stuck in it. You've got to use every single experience as an opportunity to learn and grow, and maybe even figure out how you could impact others based on your lived experiences.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Tell us some of the topics that you speak on.
So I truly found my voice over this past year, especially because I have seen so many parents filled with anxiety and stress because of all the unknown that this pandemic has brought. And so many, right? So many feel lost because they don't know how their kids are going to cope with the fact that they've missed out on all these milestones, right? Or they've been thrown off course because now their education is virtual, and that's not necessarily the best way for all kids to learn, right? So I feel like by sharing my journey and the lessons that I've learned with it, I am able to help not just parents, but I think it applies to the business world as well, just help people change their perspective a bit and realize that we can embrace uncertainty and not get stuck in the fear, but rather walk through it, even though it may be really difficult, and realize that sometimes when we're thrown off course, when life gives us these zigs and zags and curveballs, that may be the very thing that puts us on a path of higher purpose. I've seen that happen, to myself and to Brandon over and over again. Nice. So I am passionate about sharing our journey and those lessons as well.
I love it. That's great. And I love all of those golden nuggets that you've been sharing with our audience today. Where can they reach out to you? Where can our audience find you?
Yeah. So, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram are great places to connect. Clubhouse, of course. And you can always find information about Brandon's talks and his book, 10 Feet Tall, on his website. The book is right in back of me, the orange book.
Great. Okay. 10 feet tall.
10 feet tall. It's all about mindset. So you could find all of that on his website, brandonfarbstein.com. And I look forward to, connecting and being who I most needed during those difficult times, because I know what it's like.
Yeah. So here's the next big question. Do you think we can get Brandon on the show?
It depends on his schedule. He has been so crazy busy. You would think the fact that we can't travel, we haven't traveled in over a year now.
Yeah.
And you would think like the pace of things would have slowed down. Wow. But the fact of the matter is that the virtual world has opened up so many opportunities, especially global ones, that he is just doing all these virtual talks like multiple times a week. So,
really? Fascinating, global, interesting.
Yeah. It's been incredible. So I will say a caveat yes, depending on his schedule.
All right, we'll take the caveat yes. We appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for being on the show, Sylvia.
Thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate it so much. You are doing such incredible work.
Yeah, thank you. We try. We have a great team. They're all behind the camera, but they're wonderful, wonderful people, dedicated to improving the lives of children and families. Amazing. So
It all
thank you
starts with
again.
families and children. So
Yeah,
that really makes a ripple effect on the world.
exactly.
Yeah.
So to our audience and listeners, reach out to Sylvia Farbstein, follow her, catch her on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. If you are a struggling caregiver, know that you're not alone. To access more resources like this, log on to the AmericanSPCC.org. We have a learning center there where you can find all of our A Better Future Starts Here shows on the podcast page. You can also find the Happy Child app, which, as you know, teaches parents and caregivers how to create those wonderful connections with their children. And it explains it from a neurochemistry perspective so that we're not helping our children to create happiness for a moment, like social media, for instance, the way Sylvia was talking about, but basically create happiness for a lifetime, the real, true, lasting happiness. So again, we'd like to thank our viewers, donors, supporters who've been providing all of these resources, because we've provided over 5 million of them to parents and caregivers and teachers. And we just, welcome everybody to tag a friend, check out the post, check out our website, and have a friend log on and watch the video. And we've got some amazing upcoming speakers during the month of April, which happens to be Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. So we have some wonderful promotions that we're rolling out to bring awareness. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, or if you know someone who is uplifting children and families in your community, feel free to reach out to us at info@americanspcc.org. Let's make a difference together. Visit us again at americanspcc.org to learn how you can help. And remember, a better future starts here. Thank you again, Sylvia. You've been an amazing guest. Amazing.
Thank you, Tracy. So happy to be here with you today.
Thanks.